The Blazers got their best defensive piece in possibly a decade. What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another player preview. I've already dropped multiple player previews. There is a playlist linked down in the description box below, so you can go back and watch a player preview on Greg Brown, Jabari Walker, Drew Eubanks, Keon Johnson, Justice Winslow, Shaedon Sharpe, or Turner Watford. So this is number 8. I'm finishing this up in the next couple of days, so expect a bunch of videos over the next 48 hours. We're talking about Gary Payton II today, who was the Blazers mid-level exception signing. The Blazers hard capped themselves and used a full mid-level exception on Gary Payton II. Eric did a whole video on the implications of that under the CBA and under the salary cap, so definitely go check that out if you want to. But Gary Payton II comes in and will try and change the Blazers' defensive identity. After being at the bottom of the league for multiple years, the Portland Trail Blazers are trying to get better on the defensive end of the floor this year, and they decided to run it small again. But this year they have guys that can defend at a high level and play hard, and Gary Payton II is the epitome of that. Now, GP2 had an extremely successful career last season for the Golden State Warriors, where he was a role player and helped the Warriors win an NBA championship. Payton went undrafted out of Oregon State, the local college, in 2016, and was able to play his rookie year for the Milwaukee Bucks, played only 6 games, and then the following year played 23 games for the Bucks and Lakers, spent a couple of seasons in Washington but didn't play much at all, and then made his way over to Golden State, played 10 games for them in the 2020 to 2021 season, and then last year he finally played more than 30 games in a season. He actually played in 71, started 16 of them, and here are his stats. He averaged almost 18 minutes per game and put up 7 points, 3.5 boards, and an assist, as well as a steal and a half per game. Per 36, that's 2.8 steals. His efficiency was extremely impressive. He was one of the most efficient players from 2, albeit he didn't shoot much from there, only shooting 3 attempts per game. But after being a questionable shooter throughout his career, GP2 shot almost 2 3-point attempts per game at 35.8%. He became a floor spacer that defenses had to respect. And while he only shot 60% from the free throw line, his true shooting percentage was still a whopping 67.9%, which is absolutely elite. And for Gary Payton II, I'm going to start off with the defensive side of the ball instead of the offense. This is the first player I've done this for. Normally I start with the offense, but with Gary Payton II, his value comes on the defensive end, as he is one of the best defensive players in the league. At only 6'2", advanced analytics paint Gary Payton II as a good defensive player against not only guards, but also forwards. He can defend 4 positions, and he defends much bigger than he is. Against bigger players, he does that by not letting them get good post position. He gets under them, uses his leverage to push them away from the basket, and can also deny passes and pick off entry passes. There's guys that try and post him up that think they have a mismatch, and Gary Payton II is never a mismatch. GP2 also has a knack for poking at the ball, deflecting the ball, and sometimes he doesn't even generate steals out of this, but he makes the offensive player have to pick up the ball, retrieve their dribble, which can get them even further away from the rim. And then if they elect to shoot a jumper, Gary Payton II is really good at contesting 3-point shots. He has great timing, and he's a really good athlete that can get off the ground quick. But if that doesn't happen and a bigger player is able to either drive on him and kind of get into the paint or post him up, he'll actually time the offensive player's shot and just be in the air before the offensive player is shooting the ball. When most guys react to the offensive player starting their upward motion, a lot of times Gary Payton II is already up there. That's how he plays bigger than 6'2". He can test shots well, and he times things extremely well, and he's able to poke at the ball, and he's strong enough to not get bullied and back down into the paint. So while the Blazers are running things small again, much to the chagrin of some Blazer fans, Gary Payton II is no Norman Powell, he's no CJ McCollum, he's a different beast. Off the ball, he's adept at playing passing lanes, and he's the perfect guy to not only push But on the ball in an aggressive pick and roll scheme where he can trap and get into the ball handler, especially with the help of whoever is defending the screen man. But he's also really good behind that, because when you play an aggressive pick and roll scheme and commit 2 defenders to the ball, even just momentarily in a hedging situation, you have a 3-on-4 situation behind that if an offense is really good at dealing with, they can pick that apart and find some open shots. The only way you don't let that happen is if your 3 defenders on the back line of the defense can play in the gaps between offensive players and rotate quickly, as well as try and pick off passes from the ball handler. Gary Payton II is phenomenal at doing both, so I expect the bench lineup to try and force a lot of turnovers, to play an aggressive defensive scheme, and for Gary Payton II to fit that like a glove, no pun intended. Overall, GP2 should have a very high level impact on the Blazers defense, and it'll be interesting to see how good the Blazers are on that side of the ball with GP2 on the floor. Now let's look at his offense. Offensively, Gary Payton is more like a big man than a guard. He's just an extremely unorthodox player on the offensive end, but he made it work last year for the Golden State Warriors, who found a role for him that made a lot of sense. Now, a big part of his evolution into a full-time NBA player, and ultimately a guy that got paid this past summer, was him being able to knock down threes somewhat consistently last year at about 36%. A lot of those three-point attempts were open as he played next to a lot of offensive talent, but in the past it was a situation where defenses wouldn't even respect Gary Payton II's outside shot. Now he's proven that he can knock down open looks at an average NBA clip over the course of a season. That might regress this year in Portland. It would be a bummer if it did, but you can have some confidence in him being a good enough three-point shooter. He supposedly worked hard at his outside shot and has a great work ethic, and he should be able to space the floor and shouldn't cause any issues in that department. But where he's big man-like is everywhere else. He's a really good cutter, but he played a lot of times in the dunker spot last year for Golden State, where he'd get dump-off passes and finish strong around the rim, a lot of times dunking like a big man would. But then he's also a good cutter and causes a lot of damage just playing around the rim on the offensive end and finishing off plays, getting offensive rebounds. There's times where he's even used as a pick-and-roll screener, and most guards and wings that are used like that would normally pop to the three-point arc. But there was a lot of good moments with Gary Payton II setting a screen, rolling hard to the hoop, getting a pocket pass, and finishing strong and quick around the rim before defenses could even rotate. It will be interesting to see if Portland also tries to use him as a pick and roll man. If Portland doesn't have enough shooting on the floor with their bench lineup, which could be a problem with some other players depending on who they play, then it probably wouldn't work as well compared to having more spacing. But if you have Trent Watford playing a backup center spot, he can actually handle the ball in some pick and rolls, and you could run some inverted stuff and come up with some creative ways in order to make Gary Payton II useful. That's really what Golden State did last year. They found ways to maximize his offensive strengths and his athletic gifts and turn them into useful offensive production, making him a key and worthwhile player for a contending team, because defensively he's always been a very capable player and a very good defender. Now, at this point, I think he's great on that end, but last year he was a good offensive player. He was extremely efficient, finished well around the rim, shot the three ball well, made the right cuts, and didn't really make mistakes. He doesn't really handle the ball much. He's not going to pass much. He's not going to create his own shot off the dribble, but he doesn't really try to. He doesn't try and force too much. So having a guy that knows his role, plays to his strengths, and was able to have his strengths utilized by the team he was playing for last year has made Gary Payton II a reputable player. I'm just curious to see if Portland will also use Gary Payton II like he was used in Golden State, and will be able to maximize his offensive strengths and minimize his offensive weaknesses much in the same way. Final thing on the offensive end, he's very good playing in transition, so hopefully the bench unit creates a lot of turnovers. That's been a theme in these videos talking about the bench guys, is that I want to see them force a lot of turnovers and get out and run. And Gary Payton II should lead the team, not only in forcing turnovers, but being a guy that's just an absolute threat as a lane filler and a lob target in transition. Now let's look at some statistical goals for Gary Payton. The first 3 goals are efficiency goals. That is for him to shoot 65% from 2. As I said last year, he shot 75% from 2. I don't think that's totally sustainable. 65% from 2 is still very, very good. So that is my goal for him. He'd still be efficient from 2 if he shot that. I also want to see him shoot 35% from 3. It's a tick below what he shot last year, but last year was good enough to make him a floor spacer. I think 35% is where he'll be a floor spacer. We don't need Gary Payton II hitting a bunch of 3-point shots. We just need him to be respected out there on the perimeter, and at 35%, I think he would be. And then I want to see him shoot 70% from the free throw line. Last year, he only shot 60%. He hasn't been the best free throw shooter for his career, so I'm hopeful that he's worked on that and will be able to shoot 70% from the charity stripe. Now, the next 3 goals are per 36-minute based, and that is for him to average 14 points per game. He was right around that last season. 7.5 rebounds per game. He was at 7 last season, is around 7 for his career, so this would be a slight uptick. And then I want to see him average 3 steals per 36 minutes, which is ambitious, but he was at 2.8 last year. So he was very, very close to that. 3 steals per 36 minutes is just an absolutely insane steal rate, and I'd love to see it happen. The final goal doesn't really matter much because he's not utilized as much of a playmaker, but I would like to see a 2-to-1 assist to turnover average. For his career, it's at about 1.8 to 1, so pretty close. I just don't want to see him forcing too much and having turnovers on the offensive end. I want him forcing them on the defensive end, and then I just hope that he can make basic passes in the flow of a team-based offense with some ball movement, and he did that last year for Golden State, so a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio would also be nice. Let me know what you think of these goals down in the comment section below. And with that being said, that wraps up this player preview. Playlist linked down in that description. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell button so you can be notified when I drop a bunch of player previews in the coming 48 hours, and then you don't want to miss post-game shows during the regular season. Those are always a lot of fun. With that being said, I'm out of here. I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.